Hello there folks, welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash and I am your host on this journey through men's style, self-development and personal grooming. Now today you join me out in the woodland, but ready to answer some questions about a whole host of themes and different spheres of life, which have been sent in by viewers who have done so either by sending me a comment or dropping me an email directly. And I heartily invite you to pose a question to me, a man who has been interested in the gentlemanly way of life for, well, 54 years now and counting. So I'm pleased to assist when perhaps my observations or viewpoints may be of benefit to you. So let us get started. First question comes from My Three Jeeps, who says, "Hey Ash, I've recently purchased some used shirts on eBay. Amazing value to be had. I'm concerned about buying used shoes for fear they are broken in by somebody else's foot and they won't fit me as well. Have you found any truth in my concerns?" You pose a good question, My Three Jeeps, because a lot of people think that when you buy a pair of shoes, once you've broken them in, you know, that shoe will never fit anybody else like it fits you, the original owner. There's this sort of misinterpretation to a degree that particularly with a well-made shoe, there's a cork a footbed to it. Your foot will leave an impression within that cork, and if as a second owner, shall we say, you won't feel as comfortable, or the shoe will never conform to your foot in the way that it would to somebody who bought it originally. Now I would say I have owned dozens of pairs of pre-owned shoes that I've bought from eBay, Vinted and a variety of other online platforms that I frequently use to source pre-owned footwear, very high quality things that I could not afford to buy brand new at the point of purchase. And I have never had a problem, because the reality is shoes are made of leather. Now leather generally is a very adaptable, flexible product, and it will, if it's already created creases for the previous owner where the foot flexes and it causes the leather to bend in certain ways, this will take place when your foot is in there. And let's be honest, most human feet are roughly the same. There's not going to be anything which should prevent you from buying pre-owned shoes. Now personally, if you have a limited budget, you've got two options. You either buy a new pair of shoes at a very low price, which generally will mean a low quality shoe, or you buy a pre-owned shoe which is a much higher level of quality that you're buying much more cheaply because it's pre-owned. For me, every single day of the week and twice on a Sunday, I would be going for the pre-owned option and not worry about things like the shoe conforming to your foot. It will soon do so. So don't worry. Next question. Stereo Mike 75. Hey Ash, wanted to ask this from you for a while. Given your law enforcement background and experiences, what is your take on weekend recreational drugs taken by adults, particularly weed and coke? Is it harmless escapism or a dangerous activity to be avoided? A concept I would especially like to hear your thoughts on is, can a gentleman indulge and still remain a gentleman? Well, sir, two questions really. First one, my law enforcement background, of course, brought me into contact with very, very many people who have had experiences with narcotics, and generally they don't turn out well. Now, my own experience through that would suggest that avoiding drugs, narcotic of any kind, recreational, prescription if you don't need to, is the way to go. Because ultimately when you're putting something into your body which isn't intended to be there, and let's be honest, narcotics generally speaking are poisonous, taken in extremes they will kill you, it's something to avoid. Now you could say we do that with nicotine and we do it with alcohol quite regularly. People often imbibe alcohol in the knowledge that it is poisonous to your body. It is a carcinogenic. It will cause you to have cancer if taken to the extreme. But it's the point of moderation and the fact that alcohol and nicotine are not unlawful drugs. Now, accepted in certain parts of the country, weed, as you say, or cannabis is now being legalized, if it's a country where that form of narcotic is now considered a legal recreational drug, or yeah, fair enough. You know, I can't argue against that. You've got to go with the law of your land. All I can tell you is, from my experience, and let me tell you, as a detective, I was called to many scenes where people had died through taking drugs. And I remember vividly going to one such scene where a young woman had taken an overdose of a certain type of drug, most likely heroin, as my memory reminds me, and she had died in her sleep during the night. And her baby child was lying in a cot at the end of the bed, alive and well, thankfully, but facing a future with no mother, because her mother, not feet away, had died during the night because she had taken narcotics in her lifestyle choice. So for me, that is enough to tell me that dabbling with drugs of any kind is not the way to go. If you're thinking about it, think long term. What could be the worst outcome that befalls you? And if you're prepared to accept those risks, well, maybe think about it. And remember, when you're talking about drugs, like cocaine, you say here, cocaine is very much an illegal drug, Class A drug here in the UK. And often when you buy it from people, because it's illegal, it's adulterated with other substances, which even if the drug doesn't get you, whatever they've cut the drug with, the likelihood is there's something there which is going to do you grievous harm. So avoid it. A gentleman cannot indulge in narcotics and call himself a gentleman, in my opinion. So, next question. Flavius Jury asks, what do you think about mixing several shaving creams to make one product? I recently mixed 3 creams from Taylor's of Old Bond Street: sandalwood, tobacco leaf and peppermint, with a Proraso green. It turned out an interesting combination of consistency and smell and worked perfectly. I've got no issues at all with what you described there in mixing these shaving products. The reality is, a shaving product that you buy with a fragrance in it is just a mix of different things, just to get that particular that combination that you're buying in the store, be it tobacco leaf or, you know, peppermint. I've owned all of the ones you've mentioned here, and they're all great on their own. So combined, they're going to be great just in a different combination. I've previously done a video on this channel, a shaving video, in which I used just a free bar of soap to shave with, which I was given in a cheap hotel. These little tiny bars of soap that you get left in the hotel room. I shaved with one of those, and it turned out just as good a shave as any of these expensive brands that you can pay 20, 30, 40 pounds for a pot of shave cream. The truth is, what you're using on your face is just a buffer between blade and skin. And whether you're buying something expensive or a combination of different things, or even a cheap bar of, you know, just bar soap that you use for other purposes, it's going to do the job if you use it properly. So what you're suggesting, nothing wrong with that at all. And if you end up with some interesting outcomes through mixing these fragrances, and I've done this myself with little bits of old ones, sticking them together, I see no problem with that at all. Good luck to you, sir, in your shaving experimentation. Next question. Matthew de Klerk, and he says, hi Ash, what camera equipment do you use? Well, sir, I've got an admission. I use a really old-fashioned camera here. What I'm looking at right now is a Canon EOS 250D, which is a camera which is probably about 10 years old. It's been on the market that long. The one I'm looking at now is probably 6 or 7 years old, and it isn't the best, I'll admit that. It is probably not the best visuals because it's not 4K. What you're looking at is just, I think it's 1080. So it's not the best, and I would like to upgrade, and I will do so in the next year or so. But I'm a creature of habit. I could use my mobile phone. I've got an iPhone 15 Pro in my back pocket, and I've no doubt that it would provide a better visual sort of capture than this old camera. But I just love this old camera. I like working with it. I'm comfortable with it. And until I get something new, this is what you're going to get. When it comes to camera equipment, the audio which you hear is captured via a, let me think what it is, a wireless Go 2. So very simple radio mic coupled with a lavalier mic works rather well. I gave you the case of my camera. I didn't tell you what lens I'm using. I'm using a 24mm Canon prime lens. So really quite simple stuff, nothing complex. I adhere to the old process, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And it works. So, next question. Ian F. Hi Ash. Further to your advice, for those of us who are follically challenged, do you moisturize your scalp? If so, what do you recommend? Lack of hair has not stopped me getting dandruff, I'm afraid. Well, I do not moisturize my scalp. For me, I don't really need to. However, what I do is I do cut my hair once a week using a Remington Pro Cut, I think it's called, which is the handheld shaver. Works rather well. Quick Cut Pro, I think it's called. Works rather well. Only £50, rechargeable, very good on-the-go head shaver. But I also use a little bit of what they call it, Head and Shoulders anti-dandruff shampoo once a week. So after I've cut my hair, I use a bit of Head and Shoulders. I don't have dandruff, and I never had, but I treat my hair with an anti-dandruff product like that simply to make sure I don't. So it works well for me. However, I wouldn't hesitate using some sort of moisturizer. And my advice to you, don't go expensive. All right, all of these moisturizers that you'll see on the market, in my experience, they're pretty much the same thing. You're often paying for the name of a product or a brand. Find something at the cheapest price point that works for you and stick with it. Next question. Right, Vladialex. Sorry, names, tough ones. So, tell me about your literary preferences. Which books impressed you? Thank you. Okay, so I do enjoy reading. I'm a bit of a compulsive reader. It is the best way to develop yourself for virtually no money at all. And I'm a big advocate in suggesting that you see reading as a great way to make your life a better thing to live in. But I read within different genres. So generally fictional, non-fictional, and educational. But I've got the ones, my favourites here. I picked them up off the shelf as I was walking out of the house. My favourite adventure fiction book of recent years has been The North Water by Ian McGuire. And I read this was published in 2021. I read it just after it was published, and this tells the story of a whaler, so a whaling ship, sailing ship in the era of, the late 1800s, I'm going to guess. British ship heading up to the North Waters of the Arctic, and it's basically where a crew goes bad. There is a murder on board. The ship's doctor is a drug addict, but it's left to him to deal with this situation. And it not only tells the historical story of whaling in that era and how brutal and terrible it was, but it's also an in-depth insight into the human beings on that mission, because it's just chaps together on a boat. There's no women, there's no love interest in here. It's just men living cheek by jowl, and a very interesting detective story thrown in as well. Very brutal, very visceral, but a great read. I loved it. Very, very good. My favorite fictional book of all time, and it has been since I studied A-level English when I was a boy, is The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. And it is a masterpiece. Now, Ishiguro won the Nobel Prize for Literature a number of years later. This is his opus magnum. This is the best of all of his work. He's only produced about 9 or 10 novels. He's not a prolific writer by any means, but this, I believe, was one of his first. And it tells the story of a mid-19th century country house, and it's seen through the eyes of the butler and the housekeeper. It's a story of unrequited love between two colleagues, and also they witness world history at the beginning of the Second World War, in essence. But it's a magnificent book. I mean, I've read it a few times. I've listened to the talking book to remind myself of this. It is a beautiful read, told in spectacular English, very readable even today, and it leaves you with a lump in your throat at the end. It's a beautiful read, and I highly recommend it, by one of the world's greatest authors of all time. So finally, a book based on fact, factual book. And it is an unsung hero by Michael Smith, and it tells the story of Tom Crean, who is an Antarctic explorer from the golden age of Antarctic exploration, polar exploration. And he is a man who witnessed history. He was at the expedition by Captain Scott to try and get to the South Pole, an early expedition in which Ernest Shackleton was present. He was on a later expedition in which Captain Scott perished, and he was one of the few who turned back from the pole, was sent back when they were on the final pole push. He was lucky not to lose his life. And he later went back on an even more adventurous expedition with Shackleton, in which his ship, the Endurance, was lost in the sea ice. Tom Crean, I think, is one of the most impressive men who has ever lived on planet Earth. His deeds, his journeys, the things which he did on these expeditions were never really made prominent because he wasn't one of the leaders. He wasn't Scott or Shackleton, but he was there. And his part was perhaps even more pivotal than those men whose names ring off the tongue these days. Scott of the Antarctic, Shackleton, the great explorer. But Tom Crean is a man who puts their reputations into the shadows. A really spectacular man. You read that book and you will come away a better version of yourself afterwards. Mark me wrong. Okay, so there we go. Those are my favourite literary pieces. And actually, that's the sort of thing I'm always looking for. I'm looking for an inspirational story about a person from history. I'm looking for a story of self-sacrifice. I'm looking at fiction which is often based in history because it allows me to learn at the same time as being entertained. It is enrichment through enjoyment. So, next question. Michael, what do you think about clothes steamers like Conair? Some have an option to press creases. I have an iron, but a clothes steamer is handy sometimes to take wrinkles out of linen shirts. Couldn't agree more. I have a Braun steamer. I'm sorry, I don't know what a Conair is, but a Braun steamer I own. I guess it's the same thing. I use mine very frequently. Now, an iron is king, right? When you're ironing a shirt or anything which needs a good crease on it, it's always going to be the iron. But for me, a steamer has two principal purposes. Firstly, it's great for taking creases out of things like jackets, coats, overcoats, things like that. But you don't want to put the iron on directly because it may affect the material or it may affect the finish of the material. A steamer is often a really good option for that point of view. Particularly, I'm wearing a linen blended jacket now. You know, a steamer is great for refreshing the look of something like this. Not great for ironing. It's not an alternative for ironing shirts. It doesn't do the same job. It's not an alternative for ironing trousers. Use an ironing cloth to prevent the iron from damaging trousers, but you still get the great crease. The other reason why I think a steamer is really good is for hygiene purposes. Now, I buy lots of things from eBay and Vinted, be it a jacket or something of that nature. And I buy them from that platform because they are cheaply achieved on those platforms. If I buy a jacket for £10, I'm not going to then send it to the dry cleaner and pay £12 to have that jacket professionally dry cleaned. As an alternative, what I do is I'll spray the jacket with something like Febreze, you know, a fabric cleaner, and I will steam it using my handheld steamer, because that steam of course is water at least 100 degrees, so it will kill any bacteria or any odors or anything like that. So I'll thoroughly steam the garment, spray it with a material cleaner like Febreze, to name but one, and that way I'm getting my own home dry cleaning experience. And believe me, it's cheaper than sending garments off if you only do it infrequently. Okay, next question. Daniel Manor. What would you advise for somebody like me for whom shaving daily is an excruciating task due to sensitive skin? I personally need my stubble to be about 2 millimeters thick so I can safely shave without ending with serious irritation. So I shave maybe twice a week tops. Okay. That is a question which affects many of us, myself included, when I started shaving. When I was an early adopter of double-edged shaving, which is what you refer to here, wet shaving, yes, initially the skin doesn't like it. It's different. It starts to show you that it doesn't like it by showing redness, irritation, bumps, or whatever. What I would say is stick with it. First of all, your skin acquires a memory as to what you're using on it, how you're treating it. So if you're shaving with a double-edged razor, in theory, it should be a lot better for sensitive skin than using a cartridge razor. So very quickly you will discover your skin prefers that single blade double-edged razor. Shave, with say 1 or 2 passes. But stick with it. You can, of course, lessen the impact of shaving by using sensitive skin products. So maybe a pre-shave, maybe sensitive skin shaving cream. Personally, I don't see much difference in them. I would rather use a high quality shave product from a brand like Trumpers or Taylorsville Bond Street or whatever, Harris. But you can use a sensitive skin one if you think it'll help. And then use something like witch hazel after you've shaved initially. So immediately after shaving, use witch hazel, which is an astringent, antibacterial, stop any bumps and infection. And then after you've used the witch hazel, then use a sensitive skin balm to moisturize and protect the skin. The thing is, it's hard for me to give you advice because everybody's skin is slightly different. And through trial and error, over a period of time, you will find what works for you. All I can say is my own regime involves a pre-shave, using a normal shaving cream, and I tend to use, I'm actually using Mitchell's Wool Fat Soap at the moment. I find that works very nicely for me. I will do 2 passes with a single double-edged razor, single-bladed double-edged razor. Then I will use either witch hazel or something else, an aftershave, followed by an aftershave balm. Now, it's taken me years to find out what works best for me, but I shave every single day and I never get any irritations or bumps or anything like that. I put it down to experience, knowledge, and finding out what my skin needs. My best bit of advice to you, and it's not what you want to hear, there's no easy fix. You have to stick with it and adapt to your skin. Don't try and force your skin to adapt to products and processes. Adapt to what your skin is telling you. If you're getting bumps and pimples or whatever, just analyze it. Is it the way you're shaving? Are you shaving against the grain? If that's the case, don't shave against the grain. Shave with the grain only. And then slowly change it as your skin becomes accustomed. But sadly, it's a long process of just learning. Wish I could give you an easier answer, but you've got to stick with it and use products which are more sensitive to your skin. Now, my last question. A while back, this comes from Chris. A while back, I purchased some beautiful whole-cut handmade leather Oxfords. They were recommended on YouTube by another haberdasher who said they can be dressed up and worn with jeans if done correctly. What is your opinion of such whole cut shoes? Okay, the whole cut is a type of shoe which I personally don't particularly favor. 2 reasons. Firstly, it looks great until you wear them, and then they will crease in all sorts of different ways, and they no longer have the beauty that the whole cut has until you wear it. You will notice when people are selling you whole cuts, they only show you a perfectly unblemished one, unworn. Once you wear them a few times, they start to get those creases where the foot will naturally flex and bend, and they don't look so pretty at all. However, the whole cut is considered to be just about the most formal shoe that a gentleman can wear, because it has no adornments, not like the brogue or the cap toe. It's just a simple shoe. And generally speaking, when we look at men's style, the more simple a shoe is, the more formal it's considered, or even any other aspect of one's clothing. The dinner jacket, the tuxedo, it is the simplest of outfits, but it is considered the most formal. Same goes for shoes. And with the whole cut being considered just about the most formal shoe out there, I then find it incongruous to marry that with the most casual of outfits, and that is jeans. I really don't think they work together in unison very well at all. You are forcing two different spectrums of the men's style sort of world together, right? A hole cut shoe with jeans, it's a no-go for me. Now, of course, hole cuts these days, you can have all different patterns and styles and whatever. You know, they're not just black and brown. You've got a brown you describe here. So it's got an element of semi-formality to it, I would suggest. But, you know, why would you wear a hole cut when you could wear a brogue? A full wingtip brogue with lots of adornments on it, which blends so much more naturally with jeans. Much more rugged shoe, much more rugged. I mean, jeans are workwear in essence, all right? They're workwear which have been adopted into the more stylish world. So think of it like that and you won't go far wrong. But for me, the hole cut with jeans, it's a no-no. Okay, chaps, we have spoken enough today. I think we've got there in the end. Again, thank you to the gentleman who took the time to send me a question. Pleasure to answer, and a broad spectrum of things we've talked about today. Please, please drop me a question and it'll end up here at some point. And it will be great to share your issue, your worries with somebody else, because somebody else might be out there thinking the same thing, and by us discussing it or debunking it, it could make life a little easier for them. So you're doing other chap kind a favor. So if you've enjoyed the video, thumbs up, subscribe for more, drop me an email, drop me that question. Do it today, don't delay. Support the channel, buy me a coffee, become a patron. Patrons get extra videos and they get first nod of any events and things like that, which I end up planning and things like that in the future. So until the next time, folks, until we meet again, take care and I'll see you soon.